Hey everyone, this is Shreyas and welcome back to another video. This is the Asus Vivobook X and there are three really good things about this: the price, the display and the performance. But for more, watch the whole video because there's a whole lot to this particular laptop as well. So without any further delay, this is Shreyas and let's check that out. Alright, so the first thing is gonna be the specs that I have over here and the other tiers you get in this particular Vivobook X lineup. Specs I have over here is the i5-1340p. It has 16 GB of RAM and half a terabyte of SSD, PCI Gen 4 though, which is a great thing in this particular price category. The variant I have over here costs around 73 to 76,000 rupees. The updated prices of and the links of the laptops of all the variants including this one will be down in the description down below, so make sure to check it out so that you know the updated price of it all the time. There is a i3 variant and an i5 variant of lower number of threads and cores. I will describe this particular variant later in the performance section. So the i3 variant, which is the 1315U, has 2 performance cores and 4 efficiency cores. The variant I have here is the i5-1340p, which has 4 performance cores and 8 efficiency cores, and the rest of the variants also have different SSD and RAM configurations as well. But the main difference apart from the CPU in the lower tier variants is going to be that they have an IPS display, whereas the variant I have over here has a 1080p OLED display, and that makes a lot of difference. Alright, so let's get started real quick with the design and build quality. Build quality overall feels really solid. I don't have any major complaint with it. Few design decisions which I don't like, especially in this particular color variant. I do like the color overall and how the laptop looks. Not a lot of fingerprints also, but they could be visible in if you angle the light in a certain way. But apart from that, feels really good and the finishing is really nice. One thing I did not like is the backlighting. It is there and it's visible in semi-dark conditions, but if you're using in even this kind of a lighting, it is tough to figure out a few of the keys because it's not as even or as bright. And few keys look a bit odd, like the enter key has this stripe, and especially that kind of gives off how uneven the backlighting is. One more thing is that this is a 15.6-inch laptop, but it has a very good aspect ratio on the screen, which is really welcome. Also, this particular screen tilts up to 180 degrees, folds completely flat. But yes, this is not a 360 laptop. But the benefit of not being a 360 laptop is that the screen hardly wobbles, especially when you're typing on desk or lap, which does happen with most 360 laptops because the tolerances on the hinges are a little differently designed in that particular use case. Apart from that, keyboard and trackpad are a bit off center because given the size of the laptop, you also get a numpad. Now I know a lot of students and professionals will actually admire having a full size numpad over here. I have a full size keyboard as well, but I also use a mouse. But yes, one thing, if you're not used to this kind of a form factor, is that the trackpad is a bit off center and so is the typing part of the keyboard. That's something you need to get used to. But given the depth of the keyboard and how the chassis is laid out, you have ample space for your palms to rest on the keyboard chassis while typing it out. Next, let's get to one of the best things about this particular laptop is going to be the display. Now this has an OLED display. It gets plenty bright, almost over 550 nits. It also supports HDR and it looks really great. Yes, about the colors, I feel that given that this is a lower tier and not creator focused laptop, the colors are a slightly boosted even in the color profiles which say that they have DCI-P3 colors, but I don't see a huge problem with that if you're not doing color sensitive work, which mostly this laptop is not supposed to do given how it's targeted in the market. So for content watching, this is an amazing laptop. Asus has been doing a great job with the OLED panels it has been using on its laptop, and I love this panel as well. But watching content on anything with HDR as well, it's been really good. Few folks over at Twitter asked me that, hey, does this have high refresh rate? This is a 60 Hz display only, but the response time on the 60 Hz is really good thanks to the pixel refresh time on OLED panels. Apart from that, even if you're watching aspect ratios like 21:9 for movies, no problem with black bars no matter what lighting you're in, and the panel gets ample bright even outdoors. Moving on, let's talk about the keyboard and the trackpad. Now the keyboard, actually there is a part of the design which I skipped over and is mostly relevant for the keyboard apart from the backlighting, is that there is a slight chassis flex over here in the middle section of the keyboard, right near the spacebar, GH buttons and stuff, and that kind of hinders the typing experience as well. Apart from that, this is a membrane keyboard. There is not a lot of feedback and sometimes it leads to typos because I'm used to a proper, clicky mechanical keyboard. That's just me, but yes, the sound is minimal, so people who like silent keyboards would definitely appreciate. Given the construction of this laptop, I was hoping that the chassis flex would be a bit lesser given quality that Asus usually lives up to. The other part is the trackpad is really big. You do not get the numpad feature which other Asus laptop gets, but the additional thing that this trackpad gets is a fingerprint reader. So that's another biometric authentication into the laptop. This does not have Windows Hello via facial recognition, but fingerprint is quick responsive. The touch area is less, but the accuracy has been top notch for me, no problems there. So the next thing is about the webcam over here. One thing is that you have a physical shutter button over here above the webcam, and in the My Asus app, you actually have a lot of options about how you want to tune your microphone as well. So that's a good part. Apart from that, here is a sample of the webcam. So this is a sample from the webcam. Let me know how it feels and looks. I think it's overall good, but the colors are not really great. But in terms of exposure and controlling the highlights in the frame, it's doing a good job. And given that this is not such a well lit condition, it's doing a decent job. About the mics, let me know how they sound down in the comments below. And with that, back to the video. Alright, so about this laptop, one of the better things, given that it's a bigger size laptop, is gonna be the ports. This has a plethora of ports. For example, this has 3 USB-A ports. One of the USB-A's is only USB 2.0. The other two are USB 3.2 Gen 2. It also has a Type-C port which supports charging as well, and it's a USB 3.2 Gen 1. Apart from all the USB-C and A ports, it also gets a full-size HDMI 1.4. It's not 2.1, and I guess that's okay given the category of laptop it is. Also, you get a headphone jack with microphone combination as well. The charging speeds, I don't have a complaint about. Most laptops around this particular price range have around 65 watts of charging speed, which is good. It takes around 1.5 hours to charge overall, but the initial 50-60% is pretty quick. So that can happen in around 30 to 35 minutes, which is great news. I tested this both with the PD charger as well as the parallel connector given, and they more or less are the same time taken in terms of charging times. Given that this particular laptop comes with a 65 watt adapter for charging, it charges up to the full 65 watts from the Type-C port as well. So if you do have supporting chargers and cables, you can go without carrying another charger when you're traveling especially. And if you want recommendations of high power chargers, especially around the 65 watt mark, they will be linked down below, including with supported cables as well, so that you have one less charger to carry with all of your devices. Apart from that, the battery size is 50 watt hours. In the lowest power consumption mode, this lasts easily around 6.5 to 7 hours of usage, and you are using the display in this particular case around with 50% brightness, which is adequate in this kind of a lighting situation. But yes, as the brightness goes up, especially, and if you are using HDR as well, I'm sure that the battery life will come down to around 6 hours or so. But if you're using in higher performance modes, the battery consumption will be higher. And to elaborate on the battery consumption, let's come to the performance section. As I said, my particular unit comes with the i5-1340p. Now this has 4 performance cores and 8 efficiency cores. The architecture of this particular Intel CPU is supposed to help with better efficiency while using low power or low requirement tasks, but it also has the horsepower with the performance cores when there are higher demanding tasks as well. Anyway, with all that said, let's see how the CPU behaves in varying power modes. Now to begin with, you have the My Asus app, which is an integral software to control the power modes of this particular laptop, and I think it is very well laid out with other customizations that you can do across display, speaker, microphone. So essentially you have three modes: performance, standard and whisper. Now in performance mode, the fan profile is something that is also going to be a concern. So for that, here is a sound test to understand. So this was a 10-minute Cinebench R23 test. So now let's see how the temperature varies in this particular modes and when do you expect it to throttle as well. As you can see, in performance mode, it very quickly reaches 95 degrees and quickly goes down as it starts to throttle, because that is expected in this particular chassis. Similarly, in the standard mode, I think this is pretty good, where you see the maximum temperatures around 91 degrees. It settled down very clearly around the higher 70s and it does not throttle as much. Also, the good part is, if you heard clearly, the fan profile is really well tuned for this particular standard mode. In the whisper mode, it hardly touches 85 degrees and finally settles down after 5 minutes around the mid 70s and around 73 degrees or so. So that's how the temperatures play around, and that's where you can see the reaction on the clock speeds as well. If you see, the clock speeds in the performance mode hits the top 3 GHz mark and settles around 2.5 GHz with few spikes and few downs as well, trying to manage the temperatures of the laptop at that point. Wherever you saw the temperature spikes is where you mostly had the drops in clock speeds in this particular graph. I really like the standard mode over here, and I felt that in day-to-day tasks the standard mode was more than enough. To be honest, whisper mode was more than enough. Even when I was plotting all these graphs using Microsoft Excel and a few tabs over Chrome, etc., I did not even have a hiccup. So for basic tasks, whisper mode is more than enough, and you can see the clock speeds of the whisper mode actually settle down in and around 1.5 GHz, but then almost go around 1 GHz and settle down over there as well. Also, the sweet spot about the whisper mode is definitely going to be the power consumption. If you want the best combination of CPU clock speeds versus power consumption, the standard mode is very well tuned. Also, the cherry on top over here is that the fan profile is very well tuned and it's not really annoying as such. And in terms of power consumption, here is where you can see that it goes to a peak 45 watts in performance mode, but soon drops down to 35 and then 30 watts. Then settles around 30 watts as well, because the CPU throttles a lot given the temps and the clock speeds cannot be maintained as well. Whereas the standard mode obviously has a spike at 45 watts but actually settles down around 25 watts eventually, and it's not some abrupt change in power profile over here. There is a very steady maintenance of 25 watts, which is really good to see, and given the fan profile, I'm really impressed over here. And in the whisper mode, really good. It settles around 15 watts, lowest power consumption, and the fans are, as the power mode says, in whisper mode, they're not really audible even in a silent room. Even if you have an AC on or something, you won't really be able to hear the fans as much. So as I said, in day-to-day tasks, this have been very good overall. No complaints in terms of how much the clock speeds are. It is more than good enough for your day-to-day tasks with web browsing, Excel, Word and such light programs handling as well. The multi-thread performance overall of this particular CPU is really good given the number of cores there, both in terms of efficiency and performance cores. So this is a very dynamic laptop overall, but definitely in terms of GPU heavy tasks, that's where you are limited because it only has an integrated GPU only. That's been about this particular laptop. Let me know how you found this particular laptop. As I said, there are three really good things about this particular device. That's gonna be the price, the display and the performance. The performance is something that really is good. I wish they could have fit a bigger battery in this particular chassis, but given the cooling system overall, I feel the performance is really done well. One thing to note is that if you're pushing this laptop, there is a section of the laptop where there is a air intake which feels really cool, but where there is the air exhaust both on the chassis of the laptop and the bottom plate of the laptop, it does get uncomfortably hot. That's something to keep in mind. But overall, I really like this laptop for the price it's offered in and around 70 to 75,000 rupees. This particular variant is definitely recommended by me, especially given the media watching experience. Yes, the speakers could have been better, again given the size of the laptop, but if you are using on headphones, I don't think you will have a major complaint. It has a 3.5mm headphone jack. Also, if you want to project, you have an HDMI dedicated port as well, apart from USB-C, power delivery charging, apart from file transfers as well. That's been it for this particular review. If you liked it, definitely drop a like. I hope you enjoyed this particular video. If you have any further questions, mention down in the comments below and I will make sure to answer it. Thank you for watching, and I'll catch you in the next video.